I'm Susan Hunt. Join us as we travel through Tennessee, from Memphis to Nashville to the Smoky Mountains, on America, coast to coast. This quiet meadow once ran red with the blood of thousands of young men. The Stones River National Battlefield near Murfreesboro was the scene of a key battle in the Civil War. On New Year's Eve, 1862, two mighty armies faced each other. At stake were the key railroads and rich farms of Tennessee's heartland. At first, the Confederates, led by General Braxton Bragg, had the Union men on the run. But in the end, the men in gray were no match for the artillery of Union General William Rosecrans. One soldier wrote home, "A shell exploded right in the middle of the company, almost literally tearing it to pieces. When I recovered from the shock, the sight I witnessed was appalling. Some 18 men hurled in every direction." General Bragg was forced to retreat, and it was the beginning of the end for the proud Army of Tennessee. Well, a century later, another conquering hero swept through these parts, not a general, but a young boy named Elvis Aaron Presley. In a minute, we'll drop by Graceland. But first, why the state of Tennessee has a split personality. There are 3 stars in the state flag of Tennessee because most Tennesseans see their home as being 3 separate states. Western Tennessee with the Mississippi River and Old South charm. Middle Tennessee with its rolling terrain and fast-growing cities. And the East, home of the Smoky Mountains. It's over 500 miles from one end of Tennessee to the other. In fact, East Tennesseans are closer to the lawmakers in Washington, D.C. than they are to their fellow state residents in Memphis. So there's good reason why people refer to the 3 states of Tennessee. But Tennessee has always been a land of contrasts, where new and old meet and work together in harmony. It's a land where the past is preserved and the future welcomed, where high-tech engineering firms reside next to rustic farms. And harmony is an appropriate word to describe Tennessee, because everywhere you go in the state, there's music. What you done done, Lord, 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 made me love you. Now your gal done come. Memphis is the birthplace of the blues and the home of the greatest American music phenomenon of this century, Elvis Presley. Founded in 1819, Memphis quickly became a major trading center.
Now the 15th largest city in the nation and Tennessee's largest city, Memphis is also one of the top 10 wholesaling centers in the U.S. and America's second largest inland port. But music is what makes Memphis one of the top 10 tourist destinations in the country. And the musical history of the city begins on Beale Street. The three-block Beale Street Historic District is on the National Register of Historic Places, and the buildings are historic monuments. Day and night, the district is alive with shops, nightclubs, and the blues. In the 1880s, rural people migrating to the city began bringing their folk tunes to the nightclubs of Beale Street. These were the forerunners of the blues. In the early 1900s, W.C. Handy, the father of the blues, would write a song entitled Memphis Blues, creating a truly American art form. The one Memphis destination that attracts more visitors than any other is Graceland Mansion, home of the king of rock and roll, the late Elvis Presley. Here, Elvis's fans get to see the personal side of the man. Graceland was a haven for Elvis. He came here to relax and get away from the pressures of the world. Elvis was just 22 when he bought this 23-room Southern colonial mansion. Graceland sits on 14 acres of land and is the most recognized private home in America. Over 500,000 visitors come to Graceland each year. Everything is the same as when Elvis lived there, even the 14 television sets. The Jungle Room is perhaps the most interesting. Elvis decorated it himself with furnishings bought in a Memphis store. And he recorded most of 2 albums in the Jungle Room because the carpeted ceiling gave the room excellent acoustics. In the Hall of Gold, visitors can see Elvis's gold record collection, his guitars, costumes, and the hundreds of awards he received. Over 1 billion Elvis Presley records have been sold worldwide, and that's enough for every man, woman, and child in the U.S. to have 3 or 4 Elvis records in his or her collection. Graceland is also the home of the King's personal aircraft, the Lisa Marie. There's another famous airplane in Memphis on display in a museum on the city's famous Mud Island. It's the Memphis Belle, the World War II B-17 bomber that was the first to complete 25 missions without a casualty. After its successful return, a movie was made about the Memphis Belle and its crew, and the plane was featured in war bond drives. In 1990, the movie was remade and became a box office hit. The plane was named for the fiancée of its pilot, Captain Bob Morgan. His bride-to-be was from Memphis, and he talked his crew into the name. The Memphis Belle was moved to Mud Island in 1987 and has been restored to its original fighting condition. And there's a lot more to see on Mud Island. This 52-acre parkland in the Mississippi is right in front of downtown Memphis. One of its most striking features is the Riverwalk, a flowing scale model of the 1,000-mile stretch of the lower Mississippi. A 30-inch stride is equal to 1 mile of the actual river. The model features every topographical detail of the journey from Cairo, Illinois to New Orleans. Every island, city, town, bridge, and dam along the journey is marked on the river's course. It's all here along the mighty Mississippi in magnificent Memphis.
The colorful era of steamboats along the Mississippi came close on the heels of the tragedy of the Civil War. The date, November 18, 1863. The place, a home in Smyrna, not far from Murfreesboro, Tennessee. In the dead of night, a young Confederate soldier taps furtively on the window. Today, he sees his family for the last time. Up next, the story of Sam Davis, the Confederate boy hero who went to his death rather than betraying his friends and country. Now, back to America, coast to coast. The Sam Davis home near Murfreesboro was the home of a true Tennessee legend, and it's kept just as it was in 1863, when Sam's mother read her son's last letter. "Oh, how painful it is to write to you," he wrote. "I've got to die tomorrow. Mother, do not grieve for me. I must bid goodbye to you forevermore." Sam was a Confederate military scout who collected vital information on the location and strength of Union forces. Eventually, Sam was apprehended and charged with being a spy, even though he was wearing his Confederate uniform at the time. A military court sentenced Sam, only 21 years old, to death by hanging. The Union commander, General Grenville Dodge, offered to spare Sam's life if only he would reveal the name of the real spy behind him. But Sam refused. He sat in his cell for 3 days, knowing he had the power to save his own life. As he stood on the gallows, he was given one last chance to name the ringleader. But he wouldn't give in. He reportedly said, "If I had 1,000 lives, I'd lose them all before I'd betray my friends." Among the ranks of the Union soldiers, many were moved to tears. Well, Murfreesboro was the capital of Tennessee for 7 years, from 1819 to 1826. But it eventually lost out to another town, a town they now call Music City.
Nashville is the state capital of Tennessee, and it's also the center of another great form of American music. Nashville is Music City, the country music capital of the world. And almost everywhere you go, you see the influences of the music industry. But Nashville is much more. It's the second largest city in Tennessee and the home of other thriving industries. In fact, music is only the 4th largest business in Nashville, behind insurance, banking, and printing. Nashville's also an academic town. There are more than 15 colleges and universities in the city. And a magnificent full-size model of the Greek Parthenon earned the city the name Athens of the South. Nashville was founded on Christmas Day in 1779, when James Robertson and a band of North Carolinians crossed the Cumberland River and built a fort. Fort Nashboro. Fort Nashboro has been recreated on the general site of the original fort, and today it's open to tourists who want to get a glimpse of the Nashboro of the past. But for all its names, Nashville is still Music City. And it all began in 1925 when the Grand Ole Opry started broadcasting a live radio program from Nashville. In 1942, Fred Rose and Roy Acuff, the father of country music, formed a music publishing company in the city, and a new record industry emerged, with such stars as Hank Williams, Patsy Cline, Loretta Lynn, and a host of others. The growth drew New York-based record companies to Nashville. The late 1950s saw the birth of Music Row as more and more record companies settled in the city. Now, there are over 3,600 musicians and 2,600 songwriters in Nashville, and music has become a $300 million industry. Known as the Church of Country Music, the Ryman Auditorium was for 31 years home to the Grand Ole Opry, as it was broadcast from the Ryman stage to listeners across America on radio station WSM. But in 1974, the popularity of the Opry outgrew the Ryman, and it found a new home at Opryland. In addition to working here, many country music stars make their homes in Nashville, and one of the city's most popular attractions is a tour of the stars' homes. The governor of Tennessee is not a music star yet, but the governor's mansion is on the tour. And that's because his neighbor is Grand Ole Opry star Minnie Pearl. Here's the home of Tammy Wynette, singer of such country classics as Stand By Your Man. The home of another famous Nashville resident is also a major tourist attraction. It's the Hermitage, home of Andrew Jackson, Old Hickory, the 7th President of the United States. General, congressman, judge, and horse breeder, Jackson is credited with being the founder of the Democratic Party. Jackson wasn't a big believer in credit. In fact, he's the only U.S. president ever to pay off the national debt. Jackson's Tennessee home was built in 1819, enlarged in 1831, and rebuilt after a disastrous fire in 1834. Here, Jackson sought refuge from the political battles. He retired here in 1837 after his second term in office. The Hermitage is a peaceful place, surrounded by tall trees and colorful gardens. It's a fitting tribute to a president who led the nation through its rough, formative years. Nashville is home to another General Jackson as well. It's back at Opryland, the General Jackson Riverboat. You can take a ride down the Cumberland River on this paddle wheel showboat, which measures almost 300 feet from stem to stern. The General Jackson can carry almost 1,000 passengers and offers morning, afternoon, and nighttime cruises from its docks at Opryland. And if you've decided that while you're in Nashville, you should try to break into the music business yourself, you have an opportunity at the Recording Studios of America. Here you can record your own country hit in a professional studio. Pick your song from dozens of pre-recorded 24-track backgrounds and add your own vocals. It's as simple as singing on the radio. And in a private recording booth, you get all the practice you need before you make your final cut and take home your own tape.
Almost heaven, West Virginia, Blue Ridge Mountains, Sandor.
Aspiring songwriters can also record demo tapes of their own creations. It's all part of Music City, USA, Nashville, Tennessee.
America Coast to Coast will return in a moment. We're here with Ralph Vaughn of the Murfreesboro Chamber of Commerce in a time capsule known as Cannonsburg. And Ralph, Cannonsburg is really almost like a town within a town, isn't it?
It really is, Susan. Of course, Cannonsburg existed in 1800. Cannonsburg was the forerunner to Murfreesboro. Cannonsburg was like many villages of 1800. It was very independent, very self-supporting and self-sustaining. The focal point of Cannonsburg was the village chapel, or the church, as we see in the background. Not only was it a chapel for worship services, the community church, but it was a place of congregating for special events, special occasions, and even in time of disaster, should there be something of a perilous nature. Also in Cannonsburg Pioneer Village in 1800, as is the case now, we have a blacksmith, the village blacksmith. We have the village miller who would grind corn at the grist mill. We had ladies who would weave fabric back then. They are here today in Cannonsburg doing the very same thing. And it was a real independent community. And we try to restore and try to preserve that heritage with Cannonsburg Pioneer Village.
Now, what's this I hear about you guys having the world's largest cedar bucket?
Murfreesboro is very well blessed with industry, but the very first industry was a cedar bucket company. So to have a showpiece or an advertisement for their industry, they built what is billed as the world's largest cedar bucket. This bucket has been toured across America and even was shown at the Chicago World's Fair on one occasion.
Well, we have certainly enjoyed your hospitality.
Well, Susan, I must be honest and tell you, not only is Murfreesboro the exact geographic center of Tennessee, or the heart of Tennessee, but we think we have the heart of Southern hospitality.
Well, I won't argue with you. Well, Murfreesboro certainly is historic, but it's not the only historic place in Tennessee. A bit south is another area of scenic beauty that was the scene of some of the ugliest fighting of the Civil War.
Moving east from Nashville on I-24 brings you to what used to be considered Tennessee's most industrial city. Now it's a tourist attraction for its natural beauty. It's Chattanooga. Chattanooga is a name from the Creek Indian language, meaning rock coming to a point. And the view of the city from atop Lookout Mountain shows why this is a perfect name for this settlement along the Moccasin Bend of the Tennessee River. Originally, Chattanooga's commerce was trade with the Cherokee Indians, but by the Civil War era, Chattanooga had become an important railroad center and a thriving city of over 2,500 people. Chattanooga was a strategic center for the Confederacy and the Union. Some of the bloodiest battles of the war were fought at Chattanooga. This is where the Battle of Chickamauga took place. And here, blood was shed at Missionary Ridge. And the legendary Battle Above the Clouds at Lookout Mountain.
Well, in 1863, there was a battle here. The Union had occupied the city of Chattanooga, and the Confederates wished to take it back because of the important railroads that ran in and out of this town. The Battle Above the Clouds was fought in November of 1863, and the Union was assaulting this position, but was never quite able to take it until the Confederates were forced to pull back.
An undersupplied Confederate army eventually had to abandon their positions in Chattanooga, giving up an important strategic post and opening up a gateway to the heart of the Confederacy for the Union Army. But had Chattanooga not fallen, the tide of the war could have been dramatically different. A ride to the top of Lookout Mountain took over 4 hours when Ulysses S. Grant made the journey by horseback. But it's only about 15 minutes on America's most amazing mile, the Lookout Mountain Incline. And if you drive across Tennessee to get to Chattanooga, you can't miss the many signs and billboards inviting you to see the area's best-known attraction, Ruby Falls. Ruby Falls was a surprising discovery, a 145-foot-high waterfall over 1,200 feet underground. Leo Lambert discovered the falls in 1928 while digging an elevator shaft to get to caves used by Indians. The unusual rock formations he found led him to investigate further. Then he heard a waterfall. Lambert named the falls for his wife, Ruby, and today it's a spectacular tourist attraction. Chattanooga has 22 different museums featuring everything from glass to guns. But one of the most popular takes us back a few years to ride a railway. Railroading remains important to Chattanooga, and a must-see destination is the Tennessee Valley Railroad Museum, a tribute to the golden age of railroading and the second largest railroad museum in the country. This collection was begun over 30 years ago and features a classic train station, locomotives, and cars that go all the way back to the steam era. And a 6-mile railroad that features a pre-Civil War tunnel under Missionary Ridge. You can even enjoy the luxury of the golden age of railroading with a gourmet meal in the dining car at the Chattanooga Choo Choo, a major entertainment and convention center covering 300 acres and featuring 4 restaurants, 3 hotels, and 40 railroad sleeping cars. And with the river so near, there are always other means of transportation, like the Southern Belle Riverboat. Chattanooga is in the heart of the Tennessee Valley Authority and thousands of acres of lakes. Residents claim the fishing is fantastic, and so are the boating and water skiing. Nearby Raccoon Mountain is a popular family attraction. Try the Alpine sled and Mountain Sky Ride. Or go for a spin in a Grand Prix car. There are also more sedate amusements like horseback riding, canoeing, bicycling, and golf. Chattanooga also offers something for the most adventuresome, a trip in an ultralight aircraft. It's all part of the fourth largest city in Tennessee and one of the most historic locations in the South, Chattanooga.
Don't go away. We'll be right back with more of Tennessee.
And America coast to coast.
In the heart of Murfreesboro is Oakland's Mansion, and this house has been in the same form since 1858 and kind of gives you an idea of how the Southern planter aristocracy lived in its heyday. It's said that Confederate President Jefferson Davis once spent the night at Oakland's. During the Civil War, the mansion was, at various times, occupied by both the Union and Confederate forces. The mansion stands as a monument to a way of life that's gone with the wind. Just a couple hours to the east of here is another great Tennessee city, and its history stretches all the way from the time of Dolly Madison to the time of Dolly Parton.
A couple of hours northeast of Chattanooga lies the third largest city in Tennessee. And gateway to the Great Smoky Mountains, the nation's most visited national park. Knoxville is the Tennessee city where one can truly see old and new meet and coexist. Around the city are museums dedicated to preserving the traditional Appalachian ways of life. And where the nation's first atomic bomb was developed in nearby Oak Ridge. In 1786, General James White brought his family to the area and built a cabin on the Tennessee River. Soon, other settlers were coming in, and White built a fort to protect the settlers from the Indians. Using his own house as a corner, White built 3 more cabins, walls, and a gate, and Knoxville was started. In 1792, President George Washington appointed one of the signers of the Constitution, William Blount, as governor of the territories. Blount built one of the first frame houses ever constructed west of the Alleghenies, Knoxville's first mansion. In its day, the William Blount Mansion was the White House of the area, a place for entertaining dignitaries and conducting political functions. Now it's preserved as a historic site and museum. From its beginnings, Knoxville has been a very cosmopolitan city. Home to the University of Tennessee. And in 1982, it was host for a World's Fair. Over 11 million people attended the 1982 World's Fair, which featured exhibits from Australia, Japan, China, Mexico, and a host of other countries. The fair left its impression on the city with landmarks such as the Sun Sphere and a brand new convention center. And there's no better time to visit Knoxville than in April during its nationally known Dogwood Arts Festival. That's when East Tennessee comes alive with millions of blooms from dogwoods, azaleas, and other flowering plants that cover the Tennessee hills. Another high spot in the city is the Knoxville Zoological Gardens, where over 1,000 different species are housed and preserved. The zoo has received international recognition for its breeding of endangered species. It was the birthplace of the first African elephant in North America. It is also renowned for its breeding of big cats, and it's currently undergoing a multi-million-dollar expansion program. But even with all its attractions, Knoxville pales in comparison to the majesty of the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. The Cherokee Indians call this land Chicanage, or Place of the Blue Smoke. Looking down from the mountaintops into the valleys, you can see the early morning fog that shrouds the area and gives it a unique and remarkable natural beauty. Over 500,000 acres of pristine woodlands featuring a broad array of plant species are preserved by the National Park Service for the over 10 million visitors who come here each year. And there's a corner of the park where time stands still. Cades Cove was first settled in 1818, and today the few people who are allowed to live here work the land much as their ancestors did. Another place where the past still lives is just a short drive north of Knoxville in Norris at the Museum of Appalachia, a living community right out of the 19th century. Here, the ways of the past are preserved, complete with corn cribs, smokehouses, blacksmith shops, and all of the traditional mountain ways.
My name is Jess Butcher, and I'm a white oak basket weaver. One of the few that's left in this East Tennessee area. It's becoming almost a lost art. I take all my material from the tree. These are called weavers, and they're rived out from the tree in this rough manner. And then I have to scrape them down till I get them slick, where they'll be just like these right here. Then these are split, usually with a scissors, where I can weave into the basket. Now, before you get to this point with your baskets, you have to make your hooks. These hooks are made out of white oak. They're pulled together while there's sap in them and tied and let hang up to dry. And when they're dried, well, then your basket won't warp. Then the other material that you have is your ribs. These has to be whittled out. And when I get this basket completed, it'll be a Appalachian white oak split rib basket.
Back at the foot of the Smoky Mountains are two of the most popular vacation destinations in the South, Gatlinburg and Pigeon Forge. Gatlinburg is a resort community boasting over 300 shops, and mountain craftspeople. It's a popular convention site, and in the winter, a great place to ski. Pigeon Forge is known as the place for families, and kids can find literally hundreds of activities to fill their time. Water slides, miniature golf, bumper boats, and go-karts all line the highway. But the biggest attraction in Pigeon Forge nowadays is Dollywood, the theme park developed by country music and movie star Dolly Parton. Dolly grew up in nearby Sevierville, and as she is quick to point out, Dollywood isn't just an amusement park, although there's plenty of fun to be had. Dollywood is a true theme park. Here, craftspeople work in the ways of the past to create mountain treasures that tourists can take home with them. And in the great Tennessee tradition, there's music and lots of it, provided by a number of resident musicians, and sometimes by Dolly herself.
I watch the kids a-playing with their June bugs on a string and chase the glowing fireflies when evening shadows fall. You know where that was? It was in my Tennessee mountain home, where crickets sing in the fields nearby.
All the music and good times of Tennessee seem far removed from what took place here more than 100 years ago. I'm at the Stones River National Battlefield near Murfreesboro. It was here on January 2nd, 1863, that the Confederates, under General John C. Breckinridge, staged their last desperate attack, one of the most disastrous of the Civil War. Breckinridge's men were left exposed to Union batteries firing from this rise, and in less than an hour, more than 1,800 rebels were left dead or wounded. Well, up next, what Abe Lincoln thought of the battle for Murfreesboro. We'll be right back. We're back at the Stones River National Battlefield and Cemetery. After the rebels were defeated, Murfreesboro became a key supply center for the Union drive to Atlanta that would doom the South. President Abraham Lincoln wrote to the Union commander, General Rosecrans, "I can never forget, you gave us a hard-earned victory which, had there been a defeat instead, the nation could scarcely have lived over. But the cost was horrific. In just 4 days, 13,000 men in blue and 10,000 rebels died here." W.J. Murray of the 20th Tennessee Regiment wrote, "If a soldier ever saw the heavens open and the stars of destruction sweep everything from the face of the earth, he saw it if he was in this battle." I'm Susan Hunt for the Discovery Channel. Join us again when we crisscross America coast to coast.
Once upon a time, so very long ago, they were great civilizations, ancient and invincible. Now we sift through their ruins, hoping to learn how they lived and died. Join the search on Terra X, Tuesdays at 8 Eastern.